Okay, I want you guys to do me a favor. With a neighbor that's sitting next to you or 2 or 3 people next to you, I want you to have a little conversation about what we talked about last week. Nate was hinting at it a little bit. Talk, what was the story we talked about? What were like the implications of it? What did we learn? Turn to a neighbor and talk to them about it. All right, let's bring it back. Sophie, you knew where I was headed with this. Everyone listen up. Here we go. What did we talk about?
Okay, so we talked about the story of Jesus' birth and the sanitized and unsanitized version of it.
Yes, the sanitized and unsanitized. Yes, round of applause. Hope.
We kind of talked about how it's kind of unbelievable. It's like kind of hard to believe because it's like so sanitized to the point where everyone goes along with whatever they're supposed to do and they don't question anything. How are we supposed to put it?
Yes, okay, again, sanitized. We don't question anything we see. Anyone else? Here we go. Joy, one more. Here we go. What's Joy have to say?
We more so talked about the beginning and how Mary could have been killed because of having Jesus. So it's like a good thing having the Savior, but a bad thing because it would have affected her life and Joseph's life negatively.
Yes, exactly. So we talked about how Mary could have been killed for being pregnant. Good. So last week, if you remember, last week was November 1st, which was officially the first day it was okay to start listening to Christmas music. Yes, some of you agree. And so conveniently enough, we talked about the Christmas story. We talked about how the Christmas story that a lot of us were taught growing up and that the media likes to tell us and that culture likes to tell us, that Christmas story is maybe a little different than how it actually went down, right? We watched this video of Mary and Joseph finding out that they were pregnant, and Mary was like, oh, I'm gonna have a little baby in me, and it's gonna be great. And Joseph was like, yeah, no problem, God, I'm still gonna marry Mary, even though she got pregnant, it's gonna be awesome, no problems there. But then when we read the Christmas story from the Bible, it sounded a little different than the cute little video that we watched, right? Mary was probably, kind of like Joy was saying, Mary was probably humiliated and terrified and embarrassed because in her culture, if you're being pregnant before you were married, you could have been stoned to death. So Mary probably wasn't too excited about being pregnant. And then we saw the same for Joseph. He probably wasn't too excited about the situation either, right? We read that he had plans to divorce Mary once they got married. Because he didn't want to be associated with someone who was pregnant before marriage, right? So neither Mary nor Joseph was probably too excited about the situation. And so that was the gist of the night. We looked at 2 pictures of the Christmas story, kind of like Sophie and Hope said, 2 pictures of the Christmas story and said, okay, which one of these is probably more realistic? What did the real Christmas story probably actually look like? And not only that, but then how does that change things, right? The name of this series is This Changes Everything. How does that change things for us, knowing about the actual circumstances of Jesus' birth? 2,000 years later, what changes in our life? And so that's what we talked about. And I keep saying the Christmas story. We talked about the Christmas story last week, but I don't know if you guys noticed or not, we actually didn't even get to Jesus' birth, right? We didn't even get up to the main, what we call Christmas, Jesus being born. We talked about Mary and Joseph and them learning that they were pregnant and then how they reacted to that, but we didn't even get to the climax of the Christmas story, the moment that everyone was waiting for, when Jesus, the Son of God and the Savior of the world, finally makes his grand entrance into the world. And so that's what we're going to tackle tonight, is Jesus' entrance into the world. Jesus' actual birth, his entrance onto the scene. But to start to do that, I want us to think about some other entrances that we might be aware of, that we might have seen in the world. Because I don't know if you've noticed or not, but humans take entrances really seriously. When it comes to people entering onto the scene, or someone entering into the picture, we take it really seriously. We don't mess around when it comes to our entrances. Let me show you a few examples. This first one is from the Olympics. I have to turn the volume up. There we go. Okay, I don't think there's anything too exciting, but this is on the Olympics. So at the beginning of each Olympics, they have this torch, and it's making its entrance into the Olympics. And I just find it funny because it's just like a flame on a stick. And that's David Beckham. I don't know if you know David Beckham is a famous soccer player. They put it on this jet, cruise, or what do you call it, speedboat, and it's like all lit up. And then they have all these like fireworks on the river, and then they have this like intense music. And then this guy holds it up like it's awesome. And then I fast forward it. But this guy like runs this whole way as the flame makes the entrance into the Olympic Stadium. Okay? It's just a stinking piece of fire on a stick. And we really like it, okay? So that's an entrance. Here's another one that we have. I forget what the next one is. This is a football team. They're making their entrance onto the field. We really like entrances. So they get all excited. He's just like carrying a flag. That was pretty like good. Like football players choreographing a little dance was pretty good. Okay, so that's another entrance. Football teams make entrances all the time. This next one is one of my favorite entrances. It makes me laugh. I don't know if you guys will find it as funny as I do. I don't know. I just find it really funny. It's Katy Perry. Who knows Katy Perry? Okay, so Katy Perry, I think she must have like hosted the VMAs or some Video Music Awards, MTV, I don't know, something like that, MTV Video Music Awards. And so she's hosting it, and so she's making her entrance as the host onto the scene, and this is how she makes her entrance. That's Katy Perry. They're just having a lot of questions about what's happening. Just listen to the things she says. It's pretty funny. Okay, so that's Katy Perry interesting. Then she goes on to like say some other things. I forget what she said. But entrances, we take entrances really serious. I just find it like there's just so many questions. She's just like in a spacesuit, and then she goes on to talk about like, hi, I'm back from outer space, and Katy Perry's just being weird. Like we just need her to get back to sing a firework and whatever else she's saying. Okay, so entrances. Those are entrances. We had the Olympic flame entrance. We had the football team entrance. We had Katy Perry's entrances. Now, you'd think that if pop stars and athletes and like a flame on a stick get really cool entrances like that, then surely Jesus, the Savior of the world, must also have a big entrance, right? Like if those people have this extravagant show, they have flames everywhere, they have all this stuff going on, Jesus' entrance into the world must have been a pretty big deal. It must have been like the entrances of all entrances, right? No. Okay, you guys are onto it. Jesus' entrance was not that spectacular. And I think if we look at it, we're going to look a little closer, we'll look closer, that Jesus' entrance was actually a bit of a letdown. It wasn't what people were expecting probably from the Messiah. We've heard Jesus called the Messiah, the Savior of the world, the answer to all of the world's problems. His entrance was not what people were expecting. And so we're going to watch our little animated video that we watched last week. Hey! Last week we watched like the first, about half of it. Like I said, we didn't even get to Jesus' birth. So we're going to watch the full thing through. So the first like 40 seconds will be a repeat. But we're going to watch it through and see how this depicts Jesus' entrance into the world, all right? This is Jesus' birth as told by...
The story of Christmas. Jesus is born. This is Mary.
Hi.
You see, Mary was the mother of Jesus. But before that happened, she lived in the town of Nazareth. And she was engaged to marry a man named Joseph. Mary got pregnant by the power of God. Joseph didn't understand all this at first, but an angel came and told him to still take Mary as his wife.
Okay.
So he did as the angel said. Not long after that, the ruler of the land, Caesar Augustus, wanted to count how many people were in the land. So Caesar Augustus ordered everyone in the land to travel back to their hometowns so that they could be counted. Joseph's hometown was Bethlehem, so Mary and Joseph traveled from Nazareth all the way to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, they looked for a place to stay.
All right, I'm sorry. Oh, man.
But there was no room for them.
What about that?
So they stayed in a barn, and while they were there, Mary gave birth to Jesus.
Oh,
She wrapped him
Jesus, right there,
snugly in
that's him.
strips of cloth
That'll work.
and laid him in a manger. And so the Son of God, the Savior of the world, was born in a barn in Bethlehem.
The end. All right, so that's the video. That's the whole story. I think my favorite part is when Mary is like about to lay Jesus down. She just goes, "Excuse me," and like she lays him down. It's pretty funny. All right, bring it back. Bring it back. Sophie. They didn't have two donkeys. Who knows who was there? Okay, so much like last week, this video makes it look cute and happy and really easy and really enjoyable, but I think it would just be really irresponsible and probably like gullible for us to think that's actually how the birth of Jesus played out, to think that's actually how it happened. Because the actual place where Jesus was born and the actual like circumstances surrounding his birth, I don't think they're as like pristine and as presentable as they showed it in there. So we're going to read the story from Luke chapter 2 of Jesus' birth. We're going to read a little bit through verse 6. So we're going to start chapter 2, verse 1 through verse 6. It says this. At that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken, and like we just watched, a census, throughout the Roman Empire. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. Because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, which was David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available for them. Now, there's one major thing that sticks out to me in this passage that tells me the actual story of Jesus' birth is probably a little different than the story that we're told a lot of times and the story that cute little videos like this depict. There's one thing that sticks out that makes me say, okay, I think it was a little different. And it was this. In verse 6, the second to last verse, it says this. While they were there, or while they were in Bethlehem. So while they were there for the census, right, there was a census being taken, so they had to go back. It says, while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. And that phrase, while they were there, I think is what makes a difference. Because you notice it doesn't say that they went there planning to have a baby, right? They didn't go there and have all these preparations made and made sure that there were all these cute little donkeys in the stable and made sure that the hay was stacked up all nicely and made sure that there's a nice little wooden manger to put them in. No, Mary didn't go to Bethlehem to have a baby. She didn't go to Bethlehem saying, "Yeah, I want to have my baby in Bethlehem. Like, I don't want to be over here. Let's go to Bethlehem and have my baby." No, she went to Bethlehem because she had to. She didn't have a choice. Joseph was taking her with him. And when she got to Bethlehem, she happened to have a baby. And so when we say something like, oh, like little baby Jesus was born in a manger, I think we need to think about what that actually means, considering that Mary and Joseph were just forced into that situation. And what would that have actually meant to be born into a manger, just because that's the only place that you could put the baby? There was no other options. Does anyone here know what a manger is? Anyone know actually what like a manger is? Yeah. A feeding thing for animals. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I Googled it. A manger here. A manger or a trough. You say that trough, right? You don't say tro? Okay, trough. A manger or trough is a structure used to hold food to feed animals. I think I have a picture of it. So this, I looked up a 1st century, which is like 0 to 100, when Jesus was born, a first century feeding trough. And I can't be 100% sure, but almost pretty much like every single picture on Google Images came up with like a stone trough like this. I don't know how like into woodworking they were back then. Maybe someone else knows better than me, but I guess it makes sense they had a stone. So this is a feeding trough, or what we would call a manger. Jesus was born in a feeding trough, is essentially what it comes down to. That was probably full of who knows what. I don't know what the little cute donkeys ate back then. Probably nothing good. So Jesus was born in a feeding trough. Jesus wasn't born in what we call a manger so that it would look good in our nativity set, and so that it would look good in our Christmas plays and on our Christmas cards, and so that we could sing about it in our Christmas songs. Jesus was born into a manger, into a feeding trough, because that was the only option. There were no other choices for him. There was no room for Jesus, and so he's born in a trough. And not only that, but when is the last time that you saw Jesus, or saw a baby look as happy as the little Jesus in the video? This is Jesus I was showed. Like, look at him. He loves it. He loves it. That's right after Mary said, "Excuse me," and then put him in the thing. When's the last time that you saw a newborn baby look like this? The parents in the room, the parents can speak to this a lot better than I can. But a newborn baby, I don't think it looks like that. A newborn baby, if you weren't aware, comes out covered like in goop and all sort of like bodily liquids, and it's usually screaming, and it looks like this like little alien just came out of another human, and it's just like, it's a beautiful moment. A baby being born is a beautiful, what'd you say?
Staring at him like a creepy stalker.
Yeah, it's a strange situation. Okay, so this birth looks a little different, right? It's a little different. So, bring it back. Jesus was probably screaming, he was probably throwing up, he was probably pooping all over the place. That's how God made his entrance into the world, as a little weird alien baby covered in goop and slime and screaming and pooping all over the place. That's how God came into the world. That's not how the story normally goes, though, right? Right? That's not the story we're normally told. So, just like last week, we're going to ask the question, how does that change things? Why does it matter if Jesus was covered in goop or not covered in goop? Why does it matter if he was born in a nice fancy crib or a feeding trough? Why does it matter? What does that change about our life 2,000 years later? How does that change things? I think it does. I think it really changes things, because I don't know about you guys, but when I think about God and the way that he's described, and I hear that he's the creator of the universe and the most powerful being in existence, and he holds the planets and he holds the stars in the palms of his hands, when I hear that, it's really easy for me to think, man, like, I can't relate to that God. Certainly that God can't relate to me. Someone with that sort of power and presence must surely have more important things in this world to care about than my little life here. But I think all of that changes. I think everything about that mindset changes when we understand how Jesus made his entrance into the world. Because God could have made some sort of incredible, grand, triumphant entry. He could have came down like Katy Perry in the spacesuit. He could have came down so that all eyes were on him, so that all the attention was on him. He could have made it very clear that, look, I'm God and you're a human. We are very different. He could have made the divide between humans and God very large. God could have done that. He could have entered in a way that all the attention was focused on him, but he didn't, right? That's not how God entered the world. He chose to come in the most humble and the most unexpected and the most simple and the most relatable way, as a little helpless baby. And not only is that how Jesus came into the world, simply and humbly and relatably, but that's who God is today. And that's how God relates to us today. God is not an attention-seeking, all about me The world revolves around me, God. He's a God who cares about you, who sees you, and who knows you, and who loves you, and gives you attention when you speak with him. He sees you and he knows you. He's not a God who's this unrelatable, lofty voice just booming down from the sky. He knows what it's like to be a human, and he knows what it's like to walk through every single challenge that we walk through on a daily basis, and he knows what it means to be rejected by people and to be made fun of by people, and he knows what it means to be anxious, and he knows what it means to be scared. He knows what it means to be human. And he is not a God who loves himself more than anything else in the world. He's not a God who turns his back because he's so concerned with himself, but he's a God who cares for you and cares for us. He's a God whose attention is turned towards us and who loves us and who wants to have relationship with us. The God who came as a human, baby Jesus, it's the same God we know today. And it says so much, I think, that God came as a baby, as a human. It says so much about how he connects with us. He knows what it's like to be human. He chose, when he could have distanced himself from us and could have said, look, I'm God, I'm in charge, you're just a little human. When he could have distanced himself and made that gap further, he said, no, I want to become like you. I want to take on human flesh like you have. I want to experience what you're experiencing. And so he came and became like us. And that says so much about who God is. And it's no different today than when Jesus was born 2,000 years later. He's a God who understands you and hears you and sees you and wants to know you. He's not afraid of your mess. He's not afraid of all the mess, the crap that we go through as humans. He's not confused by it. He doesn't say like, I wonder what that must be like. Like, why can't they just suck it up? He knows what it's like to be a human. And so when we understand how Jesus came in a simple and a humble and an unexpected way, it changes everything about how we connect with him today, right? All right. I want us to pray before we break into our small groups. And as we're praying, I just want you to be thinking about what it means for God to have become a human. And just try to we say it a lot, like God became a human. And as December gets closer, we'll hear about it a lot. We say God became flesh sometimes. The Word became flesh. But I want us to think about, what does it actually mean for the God of the universe, this God that we believe in, who created everything in sight and beyond our sight, both the known and the unknown, everything created by him. What does it mean that he became a human? So I want you to think about that as we're praying. God, it doesn't really make sense for you to have put on human flesh. You could have remained God, high above it all, watching from a distance, but instead you chose to make yourself known to us. Not only make yourself known, but make yourself like us, God, in the person of Jesus. And so we thank you for that. Thank you that you understand what we go through. Thank you that you hear us when we talk with you. You look at us when we look at you. And you can relate to us, God. And you showed that in your birth by being born as a human, just like every other human was born, God. There's nothing, it doesn't say in the Bible, anything exceptional about your birth. It was the birth of a human, God, that every one of us in this room has gone through. You did the same, God. And everything that we go through you've felt and you've known what that's like. So Jesus, would you just make yourself continually known to us? Would we understand how close you draw to us, how near you are to us, God, how much you understand us? There's something really comforting knowing that, God, I can come to you and you're going to understand. I can come to you and you will have been there. You will have felt that pain, felt that joy, felt that confusion, whatever it is. God, you became like us by being born as a human. Would we not take that for granted? Would you teach us what it means to follow you, God, and to love you more, to continue to have a relationship with you? Thank you for who you are in this world, for what you did 2,000 years ago, what you continue to do today. Thank you that you change things in our life, God. Because of you, things in our life change. And thank you for that, Jesus. I pray this in your name. Amen.